Why do you think he did it? So here, is it madness or is it
No,
calm
it's not madness.
strategic calculation?
Perhaps this one I cannot answer you faithfully because, first of all, we don't know what he was told. If he was indeed getting the right intelligence estimates, from what I said earlier in that essay I wrote, you would think he was not well informed, perhaps, about the degree of cooperation he would get from the Ukrainian Russians in Ukraine. That would be one factor, that he didn't assess the operation correctly. Remember this: Mr. Putin has had this cancer, and I think he's licked it, but he's also been isolated because of COVID. And some people would argue that the isolation from normal activity, which he was meeting people face to face, but all of a sudden he was meeting people across the table 100 yards away or whatever, 10 yards away. It was very hard to, perhaps he lost touch with contact with people.
So it's not just power, it's the very simple fact that you're just distant.
As I say, I'm speculating. Humans. I don't know. I see that. And I also, perhaps he thought in his mind that there would be a faster resolution, that the Ukrainian, because the evidence had been that the Ukrainian Russians, the Ukrainian army had folded so many times and that they were only backed up and they were stiffened by the resistance of the Nazi Nazi-oriented Azov battalions. That was a factor, of course. And that is a big factor for the Russians because these people are very tough. They're Russian. See, what people don't understand is that Ukraine, since 2014, has been a terror state. They've been run. Anytime a Ukrainian has expressed any understanding of the Russian-Ukrainian position, they've been threatened by the state. From 2014 to 2022, there's been a set of hideous murders that people don't even know about in the West. Journalists, people who speak out, liberals, people who I interviewed Viktor Medvedev, who they make out to be some kind of horrible person, but Medvedev was a very important figure in the administration of Kuchma, the first Ukrainian prime minister in the 1990s, and he did a great job on the economy. He was a very thoughtful man. And if you'll see my interview, it's called Ukraine Revealed. Mm-hmm. He's very thoughtful about the future of Ukraine. He doesn't want to go back and join Russia. He wants it to be an independent country. Ukraine is independent, and he wants it to be a functioning economic democracy, more or less a democracy, if you can get that, but that exists in a neutral state, which Ukraine used to be before 2014. It was neutral from 1991 to 2014, neutral, very important. Under Poroshenko, it just immediately went into an anti-Soviet Cold War position as an ally of the United States. And my point was that it was a very dangerous place, Ukraine. People were being killed. Death squads were out there. Medvedev, they stripped him of his television stations very suddenly. This is Zelensky, the new president, said Zelensky was elected on a peace platform. Remember that 70% of the country was for him to make peace with Russia. Did he ever even try to make peace with Russia? Did he attend any of the Minsk II agreements? Did he visit? Did he pay any attention to Putin? Did he go to Russia? No, not at all. The moment he got into office, I'm convinced that the militant sector of the right sector parties of Ukraine let him know that you will not make a deal with Russia. There'll be no concessions to Russia. This is very dangerous. This is where this attitude that's very, very hostile to Russia has hurt us. The whole world is being hurt by this. And no one calls them out. No one calls them out. Zelensky backed off from his platform as running for president, and as president has been ineffective, did nothing to promote it. On the contrary, went the other way and seemed to support the Ukrainian aggression.
Well, he found his support in this war. You've revealed through your work some of the most honest and dark aspects of war.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, this is a war, and there's a humanitarian crisis. Millions of people, refugees escaping Ukraine. What do you think about the human cost of this war initiated by
It's horrible.
whoever, just as you write, whatever the context, whatever NATO, whatever pressure, as you wrote, Russia was wrong to invade.
Okay, yeah. Let's get back to the original question. You said, "What was he thinking at that time?" We never answered that.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, among those people who've been ruined by this war, you have to include the 2014 to 2022 Ukrainian Russians. 14,000 were killed, not necessarily by some of them by maybe accident and this and that, but certainly a large number of that is responsible to the Ukrainian military and the Nazi-related battalions who have done a good job of death squadding that whole area. And remember, I did a film about Salvador. I know a little bit about death squads and how they work, and I know about paramilitaries because in South America, they're all over the place. America hates Venezuela, goes on about Venezuela. But do they tell you anything about Colombia, its next door neighbor? Colombia for years has been plagued by paramilitaries that are right wing. And the United States has said nothing about them, except occasionally there's a newspaper report now. So this support of death squads by the United States is all over the world. It's not just in South America and Central America where we see plenty of evidence of it. It's here too. And this is what's horrible about this whole thing, this hypocrisy of America, that they can support such evil. Now, going back to your larger question about, yes, it's a terrible refugee disaster. But again, we have to get the numbers. Let's get the numbers and get evidence, because I would ask you, I'm not sure at this point whether more civilians were killed before 2022 in Donbass than have been killed in this latest.
So we can't talk about this we can't talk about the invasion of Ukraine without considering the full war between Russia and Ukraine since 2014.
That's correct. Absolutely. And take the toll on both sides. And you might be surprised by the result. I think the Russian military, of course, I'm not there, and this is speculation. The Russian military has slowed down, and part of that reason is not to keep the civilian corridors open. And I think the Ukrainian military has made it more difficult on purpose, especially some of these battalions that are death squad battalions have gone out of their way to keep the civilians locked into these cities in danger, because it's in their interest to do so. So there's no reason why Ukrainian military, who have killed Ukrainian civilians for years, would change their policies. They would have no compunctions about wiping out, for example, people with white armbands in Bucha. Okay. As to what Putin was thinking at the time, I wondered this, and I still do. I said, okay, so Putin can say, let's say the Ukrainian government wants to now invade Donbass. This is on February 23, and they have artillery. They're peppering the whole place. They're going to go in, and they're going to get Donbass back. What do you do? And you have Russian separatists who are Russian Ukrainians who are going to fight. How far do you go in supporting them? Can Russia at this point say, well, we can't help you. You have to get along. You have to be absorbed by the Kiev. You're going to be absorbed by them, and they're not going to give you autonomy, and you have to live with them. And there's going to be a price to pay. You could do that, and you can also say, well, we open our borders to Donbass. You can come into our country, you can leave, and we will help you to resettle. And that would be a reasonable approach. So you take it to the next stage, as Putin's thinking. You take it to the next stage. You stall. It's harder for your people. Of course, there's this pressure on Putin from inside his own government to say, what are you going to do? I mean, you can't do this. There's a lot of nationalists in Russia. They would certainly it would be they'd say Putin is weak. And that's the biggest rap you can ever give a Russian leader, is you're weak. You can't get anything done. So there would have been some damage. But let's say he goes with that and he says, okay, we know what the United States intention is. It's to get rid of me, regime change, and to get another Yeltsin in. That's what they want. And they will go to any ends. They will destroy Ukraine if necessary, but they want regime change in Russia. And then after they do that, of course, they'll go after China. But that's the ultimate policy of the United States. This is a country that has no compunctions about going all the way. And it will use hypocrisy and all the news propaganda in the world to get what it wants. This is the equivalent, frankly, of Germany's goals in World War II, world domination. There's no question in my mind. But we're going about it in our way as opposed to Hitler's way. So just to finish your thought, where do they go? What's stage two? Okay, let's say Ukraine takes back Donbass. Let's say people get killed in large quantities. So we now to the next stage. We're finished with the Minsk II agreements that were never adhered to. So what does Russia do? They wait for the next aggression, which is going to come in one form or another, perhaps in Georgia. Perhaps, I don't know what happened, what the U.S. is thinking, but they would have. The U.S. cannot say Russia has done anything. They have not used violence to stop Donbass from belonging back to Ukraine, right? So you're in a new setup now. It's a whole thing rearranges. Now but you still have nuclear weapons, and you still have Russian nuclear weapons, and they're serious weapons. They're very well developed, crude, but not as refined as the American nuclear force, but powerful. That becomes another game. Then you open another chessboard, and you still haven't been condemned. The sanctions haven't been imposed. It's a new game. Could he have lived with that? That's the question I ask myself.